joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time. I think I'd explained before that, you know, I'm our EDI champion, passionate about elevating women in procurement. You know, it's still such an underrepresented community, particularly at the senior end. So to have 3 women directors as part of a network rail, which is obviously a male dominated environment, I think just helps highlight that and will give such credence to our network that are facing potentially some challenges at the moment. So what I thought would be good, if we just kick off, if you could just do a brief intro for each of you, that would be great. And then we'll start the discussion. So Sarah, did you want to kick us off?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm SJ Aldridge. I'm the sourcing director, and I sit between Hannah and Emma, and helping the commercial and procurement team function and get best value.
Perfect. Hannah?
So yeah, I'm Hannah Jarvis. I'm the procurement operations director in commercial and procurement at Network Rail. So in simple terms, kind of my team look after anything that falls through the gaps of category management, sourcing and supplier management. So, you know, process, procedure, assurance, RR35, is a whole host of different things. So every day is a different challenge.
Very good. And Emma?
Hi there, Emma Osborne, Category Management Director for Network Rail. So I have a team that works across the business to develop commercial strategies in advance, really, of then going into any kind of sourcing and supply management activity. Although, of course, we have to work absolutely closely with all of those colleagues to make those strategies fit for purpose. And my background is railway, really, not procurement. So I'm really enjoying this. I've been in this kind of world for a couple of years, but in the railway for a lot longer. And yeah, I really love it.
How have you found procurement?
I feel like procurement gets a bad rap, actually. It's like completely different in it to how people see it from the outside, me included. And when you're in it, you can see it's just these dedicated professional people absolutely like busting a gut to get things done for their customers, often for very little thanks and appreciation. So it's a very professional community, but it's a slightly misunderstood community, I think. And some of that we can change ourselves, right, becoming a bit more customer centric, and a bit less maybe compliance and process oriented. But some of it I think is for the business to understand and respect and be grateful for the service provided and the protection given. So yeah, it's interesting to be in it. I appreciate it a lot more.
And Hayley, so Hannah and I have been our procurement professionals in the sense of it's our career. I've been in 25, maybe 27 years. I've stopped counting, I think, after 25 years. But it's interesting because exactly as said, we don't get a huge amount of reward for what we do. You've just got to keep going and keep going. So we don't. I think we get to a point where we don't actually expect it now, which maybe is the wrong thing. And maybe we can bring some diversity in the future by saying, look, we actually need that recognition. So it would be really nice to be recognised, I think, more.
I think it depends where procurement sits within the organisation as well, and who is championing it. You know, depending on the reporting lines upwards, can have a very different perception on how a business views procurement. You know, we still don't have procurement on the board largely for a lot of organisations. That has to change. I think fundamentally when procurement gets a seat at the table and at the C-suite, that's when the real value and the perception will change. But we've got to do more to try and make that happen. And it's still, you know, from my perspective, it's still a relatively immature profession. In if you compare when you're at school and you're going through your subjects or what you want to do, you know, you're either going to be a lawyer or a teacher or a doctor, and there are clear metrics and exams you pass to get that. Whereas it's not that way. And at grassroots level, children still don't know what procurement is. I've been to so many careers fairs and discussed procurement. And actually, when they get to the brass tacks and understand what it is, they're really interested, but it's still not celebrated at grassroots enough for people to want to choose it as a career. You just fall into it, a bit like recruitment. You know, I didn't dream of being a recruiter, but you kind of fall into it. I think we have the same challenges as you about that value add piece as well. And you do a lot of work for little return sometimes. So
it's interesting. It's right what you're saying, Hayley. I think that I fell into procurement. I started off as an assistant buyer, actually. You know, and I can remember in my first interview, somebody said, you know, what do you know about procurement? I was like, I think you buy things, but I'm not too sure. And it was, you know, but I'll work hard. And it it's definitely, I love procurement. I love being in procurement. It's really, really enjoyable. I think, as I say, it's something different happens every day. No day's the same, and that's something that keeps me really interested and engaged. It's very fast paced. I think, interesting thing about Network Rail specifically is because we're regulated, or a lot of public sector as well, regulated. Procurement, you haven't got a choice whether to use procurement or not. You have to use procurement. So you're right. The seat at the table is really important to be able to make the right decisions. And we can be seen as a lot of red tape, and we don't want that to be the case. We want to show the value we add in, so that's obviously a constant challenge. But in terms of making it career for people, there is a lot of work as well. I think that's been being done by people like the SIPS branch, SIPS, where they're looking at, can we go out to schools and start to engage people more? We've got apprenticeships, graduates coming in, all that sort of stuff helps. But I align to what you're saying, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. I think from a career perspective, it's actually a brilliant, the world of procurement is it's extremely transferable from one company or sector to another. So it's essentially a career for life, and you can be very technically highly qualified, but I think you could also come with other skills, and we've definitely started changing the way we recruit for people in commercial and procurement in Network Well, and we're recruiting much more now for behaviours, for leadership skills, for stakeholder engagement capability, for the ability to sort of communicate and translate between technical policy and process things and the operational kind of messy, complicated reality of running a railway, or probably running any other big company or industry. So that's something I would, if I was talking to people in schools now, I wouldn't be talking to them about, are you good at maths and can you calculate kind of commercial things, because now you have spreadsheets and computers and software that does that for you. I'd be saying, can you communicate to people? Can you really listen and understand what somebody's asking and what they're trying to achieve? Can you kind of translate between the outcomes that they want and the options we have to deliver it to them? Are you interested in understanding what's going on in the outside world, and then working out, how do I make that helpful for things we want to achieve in Network Well? Those are like quite a different skill set to what I assume, if I make a sweeping generalisation about procurement, that might be a different skill set to what we might have asked for 10 years ago, I guess, and possibly much more appealing and much more inclusive of a wider group of people.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've Emma and SJ probably as well, actually, in terms of you've got the specification from the stakeholders, and sometimes when they talk to you about it, it's very technical. People have been in the industry for a long time for things you need to buy, and actually having the ability to question that and ask the simple stuff and having the right behaviours is important. And I guess you do you find that in a day-to-day space you're asking those questions, and you've got people that are able to delve into that.
I think as well, one of the things I really like about procurement is the fact that you are learning every single day. And I think, dare I say it, but I think from a female perspective, we're very good at asking those open, curious questions and being really interested. And sometimes we buy some really fantastic stuff. I mean, I have in my career. And then we go to the other ends of the spectrum where you're dealing with extremely technical stuff. And so the diversity in what we deal with, and the people and the businesses that we deal with, it's madness, really. In reality, if we sat down and thought about it, we'd probably scare ourselves. So we try not to think about it too much. But yeah, absolutely, it's the technical bit. But what I like is the fact that you're going with a service, you're going with something that people go, oh, that's how you do it, and they have a bit of an aha moment as well. And we're working as a team to try and market ourselves much better in Network Rail as that sort of service. And it's always hard to land. You can never always land it well in an organisation, because you've really got to get people to be really tempted to come and say, do you know what, I really want to go and buy something. Can you help me? Yeah. Now, when we hit that, when we crack that nut, it's just going to be so fantastic when people start coming to you and saying, oh, I really need your help. It's a bit like I wouldn't go out to recruit without HR. I would be too scared to think, oh my goodness, I'll go and interview a few people, and then, oh look, I've got somebody, and then I go to HR and they'd go, well, you've done it completely wrong. And you'd be like, oh no. So I think we really need to, and I think we're really lucky as well. I think we can do a lot of our work in a flexible environment as well. So we can, I mean, it also makes it extremely busy, but it means that we've got that thinking time when we can sit down and we can write a category strategy, or we can write a tender document, or we can read documents about what's happening in the market. And there's so much, we're so lucky in our age with the internet and the understanding that we can gain. And it only enhances you as a professional, but also that skill within an organization, retaining people like that is also really important, because that's really hard to, you know, to keep people in an organization that's built all of that knowledge. And Hannah and I haven't been in Network Rail for a long time. I've been in, it must be about 14 months now. But the stuff, if the stuff I'm learning today versus I came in with is just, you know, off the scale, really. And I think that's some of the real joy in the work that we do.
Brilliant. And when we talk kind of more around the challenges that you might have faced throughout your careers, I think I explained to you, we've held a series of webinars and workshops recently for women in particular that are either at that grassroots level or progressing through their career with 3 to 5 years experience. And there are common themes to come out of it in terms of the challenges they face. So the first one was around confidence. Particularly some industry sectors that were male dominated, women didn't necessarily feel that their voice was as heard. Suppliers weren't necessarily as reactive to them as some of their male counterparts. Having a voice over Zoom or virtually, they were always kind of talked down. And I guess confidence is a huge issue for them. I think the second thing to cite was childcare and the flexibility around that, and that might inhibit them potentially progressing to a more senior level. And the third thing was around the lack of mentors within their organisation, or the fact that they had a mentor that they'd been paired with that wasn't necessarily relevant for them at their stage of life and career. So they were kind of the three challenges. And I guess I'd put that out to you to kind of discuss and say, have you also experienced those three things? And if so, what can we do as a senior community to kind of help support the future generations of directors?
I'll take the childcare one, because I'm a single working mum. I have one son, and I'll take that one, and then I'll leave the other two for Hannah and Emma. But yes, it is an absolute challenge, and it has definitely been a challenge since the lockdown with homeschooling. And it's such a pressure. It helps you realize that, you know, the other industries, as in teaching, are much more valuable than we ever thought they were. Yeah. But in terms of being able to do a senior role and be a worker, for me, being a single working mum, of course, it's absolutely achievable. And you're only going to limit yourself if you turn around and say, well, I can't. You should never limit your own beliefs that you can do it. It's whether you can articulate yourself really well by actually saying, you know, or structuring your day, or saying to your line manager, and actually being really honest about what the art of the possible is for you. Now, I'm really lucky because my son is really easy to look after, and I only have the one. But if I put myself in the place of somebody that might have 3 very young children under the age of 5, you know, you've got all sorts of elements there that are really difficult to manage. But I do have a very large team. I have over 80 people that I look after. And I'm the first person to turn around and say, go and sort out your child, book out your lunch, have your lunch with them, get them sorted. Work will always be there, but you can spread your day out. And it might sound like, you know, we've all got to work. You know, we've got to work. Work is important, and you've got to make it an important aspect. But don't limit your beliefs by not thinking you can structure, ask for help, outsource wherever possible. And also, don't be so hard on yourself. You know, if during these times specifically, if you've got to put your child in front of the TV for an hour and a half while you get on a Zoom call, so be it. That's absolutely fine. We're all doing it. There's no shame in that. But I've probably, my career actually took off after I had my son, and which I still find quite surprising. I don't know how that happened, except I think it gives you, when you're a parent, it gives you this inner force to say, well, there's bigger things out there, and I'm just going to plow through it.
Yeah.
And each time I thought, I'm doing this for a much bigger purpose. I'm doing this for my family, for my child's education, to give him what he needs. And I think it gives you a massive driver. And so I would probably say to anybody who is starting off their career and thinking, well, can I get to a senior leadership role and have children? And like myself, and unfortunately, I've obviously gone through a divorce and had to, set myself up differently. Well, I would probably say, of course you can do it. You've just got to keep plowing through and don't limit those beliefs. That's what I would say on that.
Brilliant, thank you. And around the confidence piece, Hannah or Emma, have you ever had that kind of crisis or confidence, or thought that?
Every day, I think. Yeah, so I mean, that's the one that struck with me. I think struck a chord with me. I have got massive imposter syndrome, like in terms of what everything I do, I always I overthink things. Probably people look at me and think you're a confident person, but I'm not. I wouldn't say. I probably come across as one, but deep down I have the same worries as everyone else. And I think when I first, an example, I've been at Network Rail since December. When I first joined, I thought, oh my God, how the hell am I going to do this job? I've got no idea how I will do it. And every day I worry, and I think, that's I think it's quite normal. First of all, and I try not beat myself up too much about it. I think it's fairly normal to feel like that. How I deal with it is I have noticed that I carry on. I carry on with whatever job or task I've got at hand in the best way I can do it, and I find over a period of time, people then start to respect the skills and competence that you can bring. You can form relationships with people. They end up trusting you, and then things start to feel better. So I think if you're going to push yourself, and if you're going to get on, and you're going to put yourself out your comfort zone, which is really important to do, you're always going to have these feelings. I think the vast majority of people would. Those that don't, I mean, fair play, but it happens all the time, and it's not normal to have those. But pushing on and sort of working your way through and trying to have a bit of belief. You've got a support network around you, being open and honest with how you feel, because others can give you that support. SJ and Emma and I regularly talk about how we feel, and we support each other through difficult periods, and having that support network is incredibly important. And I don't think it's anything to be embarrassed about. So absolutely, we have the skills and capabilities to be able to to drive things forward and improve things, and we just need to push through it. If I'd have sat in my comfort zone, I'd still be in the job I was in 10 years ago. So you just got to sort of go with the flow, but it's never going to be easy to do that. But
it is a belief and mindset thing. So there was a study that went round recently that actually they gave men and women exactly the same job description, and a man will look at the job description and know that he can't do 6 out of the 10 things on there, but his confidence and belief says, yeah, I can do that job. I can absolutely do it, and demonstrate at interview and fill in all of those gaps. A woman will look at it, and unless she can do 100% of that job description, she has that crisis of confidence to say, well, actually, I can't do 2 out of the 10 things on here, so I'm probably not going to apply because they wouldn't consider me. And I think that's really interesting how the kind of different gender mindset works. A man will just try and wing it largely, and a female feels a little bit more hindered and has that imposter syndrome of, but what if I'm set up to fail? If I can't think 100% I can do this.
Yeah, but you've hit on something there, Hayley, when you said, will I be set up to fail? Because sometimes when we talk about women not being confident, I don't think that it's that women aren't confident. I think it's that women are facing some invisible barriers, in the same way as people from a different ethnic background might face some invisible barriers. And we kind of say to women, there's something wrong with you. You need to be more confident. And if only you could be more confident, you would be able to compete with whoever it is you're competing against. And actually, maybe there's nothing wrong with women and their confidence. There's something wrong with the environment if it's not bringing the best out in people or giving the impression that they'll be supported to succeed. So I do think we also have to challenge ourselves, like men and women, to say maybe the problem is the environment, not the women. and maybe we don't want women to be more like the environment that they're in, because now we've just got people, you know, everybody's still maybe not behaving in the most inclusive way. I read a really good book called How Women Rise, by, I want to say, Sally Helgerson, and a bloke whose name I can't remember, and it's kind of talking about some of the habits that we might have, and it's talking about women, although I do think it's not completely gender specific. And what it's really talking about is things we might have done in the first half of the career that won't serve us very well in the second half of career if we want to go on to more senior positions. And for women, it might be things like not giving ourselves enough credit, not talking about our achievements, maybe not saying what our goal is, but imagining that if we just work really hard, somebody will notice. And that's not a lack of confidence, that's just kind of slightly illogical, because people aren't psychic. And if you don't say, I'd like that director job, please, well, no one's going to give it to you. And if you don't apply for it, nobody, you know, you're kind of, and SJ referred to self-limiting beliefs, and there is a little bit of that, but a lot of it I think is habits. And society does ask women to be a certain way, it in a kind of a subliminal way, and we go through life being that way until we stop and think, well, actually that way might not be serving me very well anymore. And it doesn't mean, you know, become aggressive or you know, confrontational or anything. It's simply saying you might just sometimes need to clearly state what it is you want and what it is you have to offer, and that's just building a new habit. So I think we should sometimes I think it's about challenging the environment and not saying it's women's fault as well.
I think the other thing to add on to that, I think we take the knockbacks much harder. I think as the females, I think if we get a bad performance review, or a project hasn't gone as well as we wanted it to go, or we're having a bad day, I think we take the knockbacks much harder. And you know, I you know, exactly like Hannah, you know, there are days when I wake up and I go, oh, I've got these, you know, meetings today, I haven't prepped enough, and you make a mistake and you're like, oh, you know, I'm doing a bad job. And that's the problem, is that I'm not saying, I don't know whether men feel like that, whether they have those feelings, but sadly for us, we hold on to those feelings, and then therefore we're frightened of recreating the same problems the next time. Now, you know, it's a little bit probably like being a female airline better than the male pilots, you know, and they have to prove themselves. We shouldn't really, because we've got a different skill set. We're offering something different to the work environment. You know, we're bringing a different thought process, and we're seeing things in a very different way. And I think men do see that as value, but maybe what they're not trained to do, or they don't feel they can do, is actually lift us up and actually say, you are doing a really great job, you know. And I think because they might see it as being condescending, or we take it in the wrong way. And I think my view is we just take those knockbacks much harder. Your analogy, we want to get it right, and if only we could balance it out some way, is what we really need to do. We need to get men to sort of recognize the fact that we bring a different skill set as we do them, and also that if they're going to give us feedback, that we might actually overthink it a little bit more. But then that's absolutely fine. We'll come back fighting. That's the difference. That's my view. So I agree with you, Emma. But
it's interesting, isn't it? On the so I think it's also, for me, what helps is, you know, making sure you look after mental well-being as well, because, you know, we talked about those things where you do overthink things, and I know my brain goes that way, so I have to think about how I deal with that. So and, you know, part of that is understanding as well, you don't need to know everything, particularly when you get into leadership role. You know, you rely on other people. So if I've got a list of activities to do I need to know everything inside out and what I have to do and how I have to do it? No. You know, that's what I'm relying on the team for. So, you know, if you've got the right, again, going back to Emma's point, a lot of it is on behaviours as well. So if you've got the right behaviours, you know how to react. You have to make sure you get that balance. But yeah, with mental wellbeing, I'm a massive leader. Time out as well to look after that, to make sure you're in the right headspace to perform in your role.
Yeah, that's spot on. That is spot on. And actually, I sometimes that drive to be perfect and to have all the detail and to be technically correct for men and women, that is incredibly unhelpful as you move into more leadership roles. Those tools that served you well for the first 10 years, if you carry them on, they'll kill you, they will burn you out, or they'll actually just prevent you from getting a leadership role, or they'll prevent you from succeeding in it because it's impossible. But that's quite a hard transition, isn't it? After 10 years of being rewarded for being perfect and knowing all the detail and being administratively efficient, suddenly those things are a burden. It's quite hard. I needed a lot of help to get out of some of those habits, and I probably am not out of them all, but and if I was going to make a massive generalization, I would say that can be a thing that happens to women a little bit more than men, that perfectionism and that needing everything to be sort of technically detailed correct, and that doesn't serve us well. And I'd also I totally echo those points about looking after yourself. And high performing athletes do meditation and they eat well and they sleep well, and leaders need to do the same. It's that simple. We're just plumbing with some complicated stuff in our heads, and if we don't look after that machine, we will burn out. So again, you both mentioned thinking time. The job of people coming through into leadership positions is create some time for thinking, and you can only do that by letting go of some of the detail and some of the perfectionism and trusting your team and letting your team make some mistakes, and it's not the end of the world. And so it's quite a different way of operating to how it is maybe in the early parts of your career, and nobody gives you a manual, do they? Nobody says I'm gonna, well, you'd be very lucky if they did. So if we're lucky, we have a good boss or a good leadership course who helps us with that transition. And
I think that comes back to the point about mentorship as well. I think there are organisations that will have a mentor program in place for people, and there are others that don't. And I think actually the linking up with a mentor throughout your career, particularly what you said, Emma, they've done this skill set for 12 years and been rewarded, but to then kick on and go to the next level, it's a different set of skills and behaviours, and to have a mentor that can help guide them through that, through their own experiences, I think is important. So I think we need to do more by way of mentoring programs, either inherently within organisations or create a mentor program that we can offer guidance and support to the community.
I agree.
I think we all mentor people within Network Rail. I think within the teams, and it's really powerful. I've been mentored by a significant number of people who've really helped me, and I've done reverse mentoring as well. So sort of mentor to one at more senior level, which is always a bit more scary. It's mentoring for me really helped with managing stress levels and workload particularly. And he talked about amniotics really well around. I struggled as well to transition, to be honest, from being in the detail to having everybody manage everything on my behalf, and if they made a mistake, I knew it was going to hit me, and that made me worry. And having a mentor to explain how they transitioned, as you say, Hayley, and how they went from A to B, techniques they used, really, really helpful. And to go back and use those in a day-to-day setting, and then go back and report on how that's worked and work through that for somebody is great. But I've particularly found that helpful when I've had a mentor not in commercial procurement space, when it's been somebody in a completely different world, but faces a lot of the same challenge. Someone who doesn't know me day to day and how I perform, I've got total trust with that person. It's a great thing to do, and it's very, very rewarding. I think mentoring people as well, and seeing the change in them. So I don't know if Emma and Esther, you've got any good experiences about?
Yeah, I have actually. I've got something quite different. I actually had mentoring to come back to work after maternity.
Yeah.
So I had it's called maternity mentoring, and it started just before I went, and I had a couple of sessions during my time off and to come back into the office. And it probably was the most powerful mentoring I've ever had. And the reason being is because it's such a distraction having a child, and it just helped me transition back into an organization and this not be such a big deal, and manage the work-life balance. And I think that's when, probably in a way you get more efficient. You realize that, work isn't the be all and end all, but it's important. And I think that for me was really powerful. So I actually would like to see a lot more mentoring in that space. And I'm not saying just for maternity. I think people that maybe have gone on long-term sick, would be really good. People that are struggling, like Hannah said, maybe with some mental well-being. How do they cope with it? Maybe they've taken some time off and they need to come back in. Even sometimes when you've gone off on a long holiday, if you've taken 2 weeks off, wouldn't it be great if you came back, if actually somebody could give you sort of like, 2 or 3 days of just, nothing happened. I don't know about you, but when I go off on holiday, I think that the whole world is going to fall apart, and I've come back, I've left an almighty mess. Just things like that so actually it being very impromptu mentoring, and I think we should get better and be better skilled at mentoring each other automatically. We do the niceties, which is have you had a nice day and is everything okay? But wouldn't it be great if actually you could have 2 or 3 questions at the top of a meeting with a one-to-one person going, right, tell me about your holiday. What was the best thing about it? And by the way, nothing happened while you were away that wasn't fixable, and blah, blah, blah. And is there anything you were worried about? And I think people would start to feel so much more in control of where they're going and what they're doing. So that's my experience actually with mentoring.
Yeah, I agree. And actually what you're talking about is quite practical as well. And I wonder, because Hayley, you said that some people are saying they've got a mentor, but it doesn't feel quite right, or it's not working out, or it's not giving them what they need. And mentoring is potentially something that is a kind of a contract with somebody, and it may not last forever as well, where you say, as SJ said, on whatever time duration, these are the things I would like to get out of the mentoring. Do you agree that you're the right person to help me with those things? Is it 45 minutes a month for 6 months, and then we take stock, and that might be it? Thank you very much. Now I move on, I get a different mentor for a different thing. And you have to have a bit of chemistry. So maybe it's about taking a bit more ownership of that mentoring relationship and say, can we just check in? Can we maybe reset the bar and say, here's my goals, here are my new goals for mentoring. And actually it might be a thank you and goodbye then, because I'm not the right person to help with that. So, and also coaching and mentoring and sponsorship are all very different things, and they all have a role to play, and they're all important. So, and I think sometimes we mix them up. A mentor's not there necessarily to give you that kind of coach-like support where you figure out the answers on their own. They're kind of there to tell you stuff, to transfer useful knowledge. They're not necessarily there to open doors for you either. A sponsor is there to open doors for you. So it's like being really clear on what the role is, and that it might only last for a certain duration of time. It might last for a long time if it really clicks, but it doesn't have to. And therefore you can legitimately say, thank you, that's been a great 6 months. I'm going to close this mentoring relationship out now. And then you just quietly go off and find another one who's more suitable for whatever you want to do now.
I agree.
Yeah.
What is it? Go on, Hannah, sorry.
So I was just going to say, it's quite interesting as well what you say, Emma, about I think it takes a couple of sessions to build the trust, but I agree having the right mentor is important based on the chemistry. But I think one of the bits that I have always thought is so important is to, and totally echo what you're saying here, is around people have to put the effort in, and people have to know exactly what they want to get out of the session. Somebody just goes up to the session and say, I want to get a promotion, I've not had a promotion, for example. It's not going to work, but it does happen. And it's happened a lot of times where people have come to me and said that. So, being clear what you want to get out of it, making sure you've got the right person, and actually be willing to go away and put the work in, listen to what's being said, accept the feedback, and then go and come back and say, well, this has happened, that's happened, is really important. And I see the people that I see progressing as a result of being mentored are the people that put that effort and work in, and don't just rock up to a session and hope that they're going to learn something new, and then sort of come back every couple of months. And so that's something I'd say is really crucial.
I agree.
Yeah, and ask for it as well. It comes back to the confidence piece. Don't wait for somebody to say, would you like a mentor? If you feel that that's of value, ask your organisation, is there somebody that you compare me with? Because that shows that you're taking a proactive approach to develop yourself. I'm really conscious of time, so I'm just going to ask you one last question each, and that would be, what advice would you give your younger self looking back? So I'm just going to do quick fire. And Emma, I'm going to start with you.
Continue to be myself, and don't go around trying to second guess what other people want and fit in with it. Like, hold my nerve, hold my nerve, and it'll be okay.
Perfect. Hannah.
I echo what Emma said, but I'd also say when you're employed, sometimes you're not employed for how much you do, but more what you do. and sometimes I confuse the two, I think. So it's just reflecting on making sure I'm making the right impact in the right way.
Brilliant.
And my younger self, I'd probably say to myself, just get involved in as much as possible. So if there's a project and you want it, try and grasp that opportunity. I think there was a couple of projects that I might have gone, oh no, I don't think I could do that, a bit like you were saying earlier, and I might not have done it. And then the ones that I did put myself forward, I you know, got so much out of it. So I was really pleased I did. So I wish I'd done a lot more of that when I was younger. And I'd say to anybody, say yes to every opportunity.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I think our network will get real value out of hearing kind of your insights and discussions. So I really do appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Hayley.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh.